Hello and welcome to the Grassroots Podcast, hosted by Green Industry Pros, where we dive into the root of the trends, business strategies, products, and personalities in the green industry. Due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and continued regulatory uncertainty, the 2020 GIE+EXPO has been canceled. OPEI and its partners had been monitoring the situation closely and working with state and local authorities to put on the safest show possible this October. However, the unpredictable nature of the pandemic prohibited this year's show from taking place. In this episode of the Grassroots Podcast, Green Industry Pros editor Ryan Whisner talks with OPEI President Kris Kiser about the final decision to cancel this year's show and the hopes for 2021. Let's drop in on them now. Unfortunately, as things stand now, this year's show is postponed to 2021.
That is correct.
So, and that was a decision by the board yesterday then? Is that how that played out?
It was, but now we had been in significant contact and negotiations with our partners, NALP and PGMS, long-running conversation about their folks as well, with their attendees' feelings, their comforture with travel. It all began to deteriorate about 3 weeks ago, right, with the runaway virus in Texas, Florida, and Arizona in particular, spiking, right, for the revisit. So there became, they were challenged. I know some of Stephanie's people were going to have to, if they came to the show, would have to quarantine afterwards, right, on their own dime. And so it started to look challenging. And so, yes, our board did vote on it formally yesterday. And then we talked to the each of those, our partners, their PAB, the Policy Advisory Board, they have reps. So there's a, it's just the structure of the show, and it was agreed upon.
Sure. Okay. All right. And so, like you said, I mean, this all comes down to just the safety in relation to COVID-19 and the feelings of potential attendees. Absolutely.
I mean, that's always been the paramount consideration, the fundamental consideration of the entirety of the show, right? So that was always, could we do it safely? Could we utilize and incorporate the protocols that have been devised safely? And again, as you've seen, some of that became challenging. The other was we did get a note from the governor, a response or an answer to our request to the governor. Remember, they have to approve the show. Although they technically approved the show, they rolled back a lot of the guidance. And so meeting spaces, meeting attendance, numbers, masks, all became more aggressive. Like restaurants went from 50 to 25. Everything went backwards. So instead of having a meeting of 50 persons, we could only have a meeting of 10 persons. So it became untenable. Plus, the governor reserved the right to cancel at any time based on the circumstance. Well, look, for some of our companies who are investing $500,000, $750,000 to exhibit at that show, that becomes untenable to have that kind of focus, investment, and then just days out potentially cancel. So again, it became untenable. But you've hit it on the head. The driving factor was safety. Could we guarantee safety? And that there's just too much uncertainty at this time.
Sure. Like you said, 3 weeks ago is when it kind of went off the rails with Texas and Florida, as the number of cases increased, and it became potentially more of a problem. Were you at that around that time starting to hear more from potential attendees going, well, hey, are you holding the show, or what's, let alone talking to your partners?
Absolutely. We were starting to get lots and lots of questions as well from exhibitors and our partners. What's the situation? What's the plan? And we were keeping it as fluid and flexible as possible, but with a show of this size, and again, remember, there were some positive precursors out there. Remember, we're a global show. We get people from a lot of countries, all 50 states, and Western Europe and most of Asia, and they got the virus under control, right? And they're reopening in a manageable way. So we felt good about that, but we obviously went the other way. But yes, we were getting lots and lots, although our numbers were pretty good. The exhibitor numbers were good. Our attendee registrations actually were running ahead of last year, which was our largest show ever. So the fundamentals were really good. Outdoor space was gone. We had, so the fundamentals were good. And we've been talking to people, certainly a lot of people in the last 24 hours. there's a strong desire now for 21, and most of those folks are rolling those monies over. And so we're encouraging people to do that. So if you've registered or you're an exhibitor, just roll those monies forward. And if you do that, we'll leave your rates flat, right? So there's a little benefit to it. But there seems to be a robust interest in getting back together. Look, as I often just call it a family reunion, it would have been our 38th, 39th year. People look forward to that. I'm going to miss it. I mean, it's a great trade show, and obviously, it's good business, but it's also a lot of fun to see our friends and family. So I'm going to miss it. But I think there's a lot of energy already for 21.
In talking with your partners, obviously you've made this decision to postpone it to 21. I know the last time we talked, we did discuss the possibility that if this were to happen, you may look at some virtual aspect, but it's based on what's been released. It sounds like that's not the way you're going to go at this point.
Well, we're going to, NALP is going to do their landscapes. There's going to be some education components that'll be virtual that they're going to do. I think PGMS is going to try to do some education or programming. We're looking at it now. Some folks have asked us about the virtual possibilities. Could a manufacturer show or have a portal? We could aggregate that. Remember, the challenge for us is we've got 1,000 exhibitors trying to create a platform or software that allows all of them to congregate in one space, divide that up so people can come in. We don't want to compete against the hours of our partners. Currently, we don't have that technology. Our management company does not have that technology. We'd have to utilize a third-party vendor during this pandemic, and we're a couple months out. I'm just saying it's very challenging. We're looking at it hard. What can we offer? Something. Is it an indexing of companies and what they have? And so we're looking at everything we might do right now as well. I mean, I think our big focus will be on making the 21 the best show ever.
Okay. Well, and to that end, there were some improvements done just this summer at the Expo Center and even in the outdoor space. And now those for sure will be, and not that they wouldn't have been completed for this show, but now there'll really be a chance to refine some of that.
Brian, that's a very good point. Obviously, we're the outdoor show. We utilize the outdoor space, and that has become far more important. It was going to be dramatically more important this year. Yes, the Kentucky Exposition Center is spending about $8 million on outdoor improvements. Literally look at a video this morning. Now, we have cameras mounted. There's a feed. You can see it at GIE+EXPO on the website. What they're doing to the outdoor area. So they're dramatic improvements in the outdoor demonstration area where they've leveled it, put in drainage and irrigation. And I mean, it's fantastic. Put in paved roadways through it. No more dirty, wet paths. So we're very excited about that. They've made some gate one. It's one of the reasons we have free parking, right? The challenges with coming through the gate one, the big gate, ingress egress has always been a challenge for us. They knocked that down, put in a new setup, pushed it back, widened it. So ingress is approved, and they made it more walkable. Certainly to those local hotels, they're improving the pedestrian walkways across Phillips Lane and to the hotels. Remember, they knocked down that stadium out back. And they paved it. And so there's now really a lot more space. Now, whether we use it for demonstrations, for exhibits, for parking, it just frees up a lot more space. So it's certainly become the utility of the outdoor area looks much, much better. And we're very excited. Like you said, they're in the middle of that right now. When I look at videos, I see a lot of dirt. And so although they assured us it would have been done, they usually couch that, weather dependent.
Right.
And so at least this way we know it'll all be done by our show in 21.
Absolutely. Okay. So what about some of the other things that would have, at least for this year kind of were in place? Will some of those things shift to the 21 show then?
Yes. So the programmatic elements, the drone zone, general stavritas, the outdoor track, and again, that we were getting concerned about we've got a person developing that outdoor track for our UTVs, which was waylaid a little bit because of all the work they're doing on the excavations. And so that will be in place. Some of the programmatic elements that our partners are doing, they're pulling forward. Some of the specific education, the tech stuff, some of the robotic stuff, we know that's pulling forward. So yeah, a lot of that will simply carry forward, but obviously we'll be updated. Now, we need to learn from this COVID business, right? The nice thing about our industry, we were deemed essential. It's extraordinary, the recognition now that our outdoor green spaces, our lawns and landscapes, the criticality of our lawns and landscapes to human health and stress and anxiety reduction, how important it is, right? It's our safe space. You know, turf mud, this is a classroom. Your outdoor space is a classroom. Nature starts at your back door. Scholastic and the United States Green Building Council, the Global Learning Lab, their stay-at-home programs which utilize turf mud, oftentimes listed as #1 in usage for all these stay-at-home folks. So extraordinary exposure, extraordinary recognition of the value of our lawns and landscapes, and business has been pretty good. A lot of these folks are staying at home. A lot of folks are back doing their own work. On the consumer side of the equation, I've seen the numbers. Our guys are having a pretty good year. Landscapers are busy. So although this is a horrible, challenging time for many, there is certainly a recognition of the importance of the work we do and our members do and our business partners do. And we want to learn from this experience. Obviously, some people will benefit, some won't. And so certainly that kind of education and programming will be done in 21 to revisit how this happened, who benefited, who survived, what can we learn from this? Because it might, God forbid, it could happen again.
Sure, absolutely. I'm glad you touched on the turf mud portion of this and just what people can focus on, since there are still some people that are still working from home and on the consumer side of things, but the landscapers are out there and they are busy. So what's some of the message they can take to their customers in terms of that outdoor space and the importance?
Yes, the nice thing about nature and that our outdoor spaces, they're our own, right? And you can tailor them to your needs. It's the great thing about it on our landscape. Do you want a soccer field? Do you want a campground? Do you want a dog park? You can create it, right? Do you want privacy? Do you want this? Do you want that? And so that's what we want them to understand. It's not a one-size-fits-all. You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You can have terrific curb appeal and still be, assisting nature. And that's what kids are learning at home. Pollinators through turf mud, pollinator support and the dissipation of the heat island effect and runoff capture and all those important things you literally can learn in the front yard alongside your dog, because oftentimes that dog pulls you outside. As we've all learned, stuck at home, getting outside is important. And if you'll just leave your devices aside and go out, I go out in the morning. I'm old school, newspaper, coffee, and just listen. I'm not a young person. And so it's amazing the adaptability of nature to, a man-made environment. So yes, although this is a terrible situation, I don't want to downplay that at all, but we really have had a recognition of the value of the work we do, the importance of the work we do, the value of the equipment my manufacturers produce, and how that can improve the areas in which we live and thrive. Again, our media months, OPEI has had its largest media months in the history of the organization, because people are looking at us and turning to us. Again, turf mud has literally flown off the shelves in its stay-at-home programming elements, and you can find those at turfmud.com. So lots to learn, lots to share with one another, and the best place to do that's at 2021 Expo.
Fair enough. That's great. Speaking of your manufacturing partners, so the exhibitors and such that would be at the show, what have you heard in general from them as far as how they're getting on during this pandemic?
Relatively well. Now, again, most of them, very few of the factories closed, if you will, right? So they went into remote work like most of us did. The factories, several of them were modified to enhance safety operations and distancing and safety, et cetera. Most of them implemented that. Now, obviously, those varied from state to state, right? We're all around the country. But most of them, they stayed open. They produced product because product was flying off the shelves. There was a window there where you couldn't get a walk behind at big box. So they've had a pretty good year. Some softness on the commercial side of the bigger units, disease. But now you're starting to see some rebound. What we know, I think what a lot of folks have been doing is hoarding cash or holding on to their cash, uncertain of the situation and how it evolves. But the landscapers are busy now. They're coming back into the commercial market. So we're starting to see those numbers tick back up. But thus far, our guys are making product. The product is moving off the shelves. We're having a pretty good year. So far, so good.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear, because I wasn't totally, I was aware that certainly the factories were open. It was, I wasn't exactly sure as far as how much product was going off the shelves. It's interesting to hear that the WalkBehinds were going so fast, but then it makes sense when you think about, well, how much of that was more consumer based as far as everybody's home, so they're taking care of their own lawn.
That's exactly right. I think for some companies, they'll have their biggest chainsaw year ever. No, I mean that. Like, because you said it, everyone is at home, and there's also a lot of anecdotal evidence and a lot of people talking about it. Certainly the case in my neighborhood, the yards are beautiful. All these people are at home, right? And they're working. I do it in my yard. I do my own yard. But they really are good looking. I mean, they've really spent a lot of time and effort, and I think there's a recognition of that. One of my CEOs told me, he was on my executive committee, said their company, which was one of our biggest, they think that change in attitude is here to stay. Remember, that was an old attitude. A lot of pride, a lot of, in how your yard looked and taking care of it. And it was, that seemed to fade somewhat, and it's back. And we hope it's here to stay. Again, certainly in my neighborhood, they've never looked better.
I would have to agree. I mean, personally, yeah, I too have been spending a lot more time taking care of the yard, and my lawn hasn't looked this good in a few years now. So it's
right. And the walkers, I've got a bunch of walkers, right? So people who've never ever walked, right? So it's walk or get divorced, I think. So they get out, get some fresh air, and so I've gotten it. I live in a cul-de-sac, and so we have. I'm at the back of it. A lot of walkers, and so talking about that, right? So we've all gotten to know our neighbors a little better. We've all gotten to know our dogs a little better. All our dogs know one another now. And so you've gotten a sense, literally it feels a little bit, again, I'm not a young person. It feels like a lot the way it used to be. Mm-hmm. Suddenly folks were at home. They had some time. They got outside in their yard. They got to engage with their neighbors. And I think on that, it's a plus.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Absolutely. That's and just unfortunately, then there's the unfortunate where you have to cancel the show amidst that plus on the other side. So there's pluses and minuses.
So you got to help us make sure 21 is twice the size. We got to make back a couple bucks.
Sounds good. Absolutely. No, we can certainly continue having this conversation and make sure and highlight what's coming up in 2021. So,
right.
Because as you've said, I think for years now, it'll still be a big show, and they'll need their comfortable shoes. So,
well, we know it'll physically be bigger. I mean, they've created additional space for us, and we'll use Freedom Hall. And I'm not going to tell you all the secrets. But there are already a couple of things we're going to do and envision. I think we're going to end up adding the West Wing, which is another, that's a lot more footprint. Another aspect of the show that we'll announce at some point later. But next year's show will be unique. There'll be brand new things, new product offerings, and we're excited already about it. The show clock that we keep it on the website of GIE+EXPO has already switched over to the 21 dates.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks to Kris Kiser for taking the time to talk with us today. We look forward to seeing him and all of you out at GIE+EXPO in 2021. And remember to tune in every Thursday for another fresh cut episode of the Grassroots Podcast by Green Industry Pros. And make sure to subscribe and share.